Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special meeting of our council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. In the first motion, be it resolved the council adopts the agenda of May 14th, 2019 special meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. The main item of our agenda, perhaps the only item of our agenda on this particular meeting, is the Financial Service Report 2019-18, the Development Charges Bylaw. To the treasurer. Oh, sorry. I apologize.
No problem. The pecuniary, I have a development that may be starting, and I feel I should declare. Thank you.
Anyone else have a pecuniary interest you'd like to declare? To our treasurer. Are you leading off this report?
Yes. Good morning. This morning we have Stefan Chechnovich from Hempson Consulting with us again today. There will be no formal presentation. I'll just provide an overview of the report, and then myself or Stefan can provide any answers to any questions you may have. The purpose of today is to approve of the background study and pass the bylaw so that we may continue to collect development charges. The current DC bylaw expires on June 10th, and if we don't have one in place after that point, we cannot charge development charges. So the bylaw before you today proposes to come into effect on June 10th. And the final background study and the bylaw have been adjusted slightly because of Bill 108 that was released. Jamie gave a brief overview yesterday. It has also been adjusted for the definition of the park model trailer, and the definition is in the highlights there that it is consistent with what's in the building code. And we have also researched about the Macy Bay Road. Did it need to be included in the DC background study? And it was determined it did not. That should all or part of the cost of these works subsequently be identified as eligible for DC funding, then there's mechanisms in place to include them at that time. But at this point, the studies setting out the scope and the cost have not been completed. So that's why it wasn't altered for that. So getting to the schedules, the amounts remain the same, but the Bill 108 proposes to basically eliminate the soft or discounted services, which are for library, general government, parks and recreation. So Hempson has separated those schedules so that there's one schedule for the hard services and one schedule for the softer services. There will be perhaps this is still all draft first reading, so we are unsure of what will happen, but this is a bit of a preventative measure so that if this happens at some point, we can just repeal, I guess, the one schedule. And there may be a mechanism, to speak further to Bill 108, to put a community benefit charge in place, but to replace that, as well as perhaps cash in lieu parkland. So there would probably have to be an update at some point once we know the timing and the specifics of that. So I think that provides. Jamie spoke to most of the other changes that affect development charges yesterday. So if there are any questions, either Stefan or myself can answer them.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone have any questions? Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you for your report. In reading the motion, I think the motion is fair and reasonable. I think that a couple of things you said are still very contentious regarding Macy Bay. Your comment about it has been decided that the road upgrades are not something that Macy Bay has to cover.
No, I did not say that.
Okay. Okay, I just want to be clear because I thought I heard you say that they would be covered under the Development Charges Act and not under a special levy.
That it's undetermined at this point, and if it's decided in the future, once the studies and costs are determined, if it's decided it is not applicable to the development, then it can be applicable to everybody to pay on development charges.
Okay, so that's a future decision that.
That's correct, yeah,
Okay.
sorry if I
So,
didn't say that
thank you.
clearly.
And then the second element is, I appreciate the work you've done here to define a park model trailer, but we have an anomaly that Jamie and Chris DeSikas are to report back to council on, because a park model trailer is, as you have defined in your document here, a CSA Z241 standard, but it has a limit, a maximum size of 50 square meters. And the O&B decision has allowed up to 100 square meters for something that isn't a park model trailer, but is like a park model trailer. It can't be a park model trailer because it's more than 50 square meters, and that's what the CSA definition is. And so I think from a development services perspective, we need to understand and recognize this new unique thing that is not a park model trailer. And I would suggest that we perhaps, given that it's not in a standard anywhere out there in the world, but it is now unique to the Township of Georgian Bay as a result of the O&B decision, that we perhaps call it a park model home, which is something like a park model trailer. It has a lot of the conformity to the Z241 standard, but is allowed to be upwards of 100 square meters, greater than 50 square meters, because it is a separate thing and different from what we are calling a park model trailer. And as a result of it being different, it probably needs to fit into a different development services category, like a cottage, as opposed to a park model trailer, which has a unique set of characteristics.
Excuse me, through the chair, Stefan can assist, but we did review the definition with Jamie, and we felt that it would be applicable to those, including those proposed for Macy Bay. Perhaps Stefan can add to that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think, Councillor, that we addressed your concern about this with the change, because the change we've made will mean that a park model trailer that is 50 square meters or under will be charged at the apartment rate, because it's felt that it's a smaller unit that accommodates fewer people. But anything above that will be charged the full residential development charge as if it was a cottage or a single detached unit.
Perfect. So where do we read in here that what Macy Bay are going to call a park model trailer, but OMB has said it can be bigger than 50 square meters? Where do we read the language in here that is clear as day that that is going to do exactly what you just said? I love what you said. That's perfect. But there's no language in here that I'm reading that explicitly defines this anomaly that does what you are saying it needs. I mean, I love what you're saying. It's perfect. I agree with you 100%. But I think we need some language in here to call out that unique definition so that there's no confusion for anybody when it comes to dealing with all of the related things that go along with that unique definition.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this bylaw is only going to deal with what charge should be imposed. And I believe that what your bylaw now will do is define the park model trailer that will be charged the lower charge. And by default under the bylaw, everything else will get the single detached unit charge.
I hear what you're saying, and as I say, I love it. Sorry, I hear what you're saying, and I love what you're saying. However, people are going to come to the township and say, I've got a park model trailer. You're going to use that label, and that label is unique and specific. And then they're going to say, well, we're going to build something bigger. We're going to put decks on. We're going to get rooftop decks on, and the GFA is going to be greater than 50 square meters. And what is our building department going to do when that unique definition comes, how are they going to make sure that they know, wait a minute, we just crossed the line? They call it a park model trailer, but it's not a park model trailer. But according to the OMB decision, it can be called a park model trailer, but it's got a unique definition of greater than 50 square meters. So we have this anomaly that we have to come to grips with. We have to find some way of defining it so that we don't have confusion. And right now, we're talking around the topic, but we need to pin it down so that it's clear, so there's no confusion for anybody else.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm entirely sympathetic to the councillor's position. I think in the context of development charges, however, this is the wrong place to be doing that. The development charges bylaw is simply going to allow the building department to decide what charge to impose. But I certainly appreciate that for your planning and zoning and all the other things that you do in the township, you may well have to define what these units are and how they have to fit in with your land use planning frameworks.
Right, but when Macy Bay Development come to the township and say, I want to build, or I want to install N number of these CSA Z241 units, and I want to install something like that, but greater than 50 square meters, but they don't tell the township explicitly that it's going to be greater than 50 square meters. They just say, I'm going to install a park model trailer, because that's the wording they're going to come with, because they've got that in the OMB decision. They don't have to tell the township anything more. How is the township going to stop and go, oh, you need to tell us, is this bigger than 50 square meters, before we can continue to determine how we're going to deal with this from a development charge perspective?
Through the chair, the building department will be researching the site plan and the application to know what to charge.
Councilor Cooper.
I think by not putting something in here is facilitating ambiguity. And I realize that the building department and planning department need to also bring definition, but I really am failing to understand why we can't be more specific. So that's what I'm seeing here, facilitation of ambiguity.
Are you suggesting a modification of the resolution where we, right now, they define park model trailer meaning manufactured according to a certain code and according to the section 9.3.8.1.1 Ontario Building Code. Do you want wording added such as not to exceed 50 square meters or something to that effect?
Or if it does, it needs to be thus and so, just as being described here.
Councilor Hayes.
I think a very, very simple solution to this would be to allow us to include, for clarity, in your definition of park model trailer as maximum size of 50 square meters or less. And then introduce a new definition, park model home. Park model home will have all of the same characteristics as a park model trailer, except it has an ability to be built up to greater than 50 square meters and up to 100 square meters. And if you do that, that would actually align perfectly with what the OMB decision has provided us. I'm not trying to define anything here, I'm just trying to say that those two labels would give us complete alignment and synchronize with that OMB decision, and that's what we have to live with and work with. And so I think it's, for purposes of clarity, we need to do something like this and remove all of the ambiguity with respect to development charges.
And I presume then one step further is we'd have to then define in this what rate either of those definitions qualify for, if I can put it that way. Like,
So our consultant has already indicated that if it's
yeah,
greater,
but that's not, I don't believe that's actually recorded in the
perfect,
bylaws.
yes. So to your point, if it's a park model home, that it would be categorized as, your normal residential construction. I think that's what you said, isn't it?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, so it would be categorized as a single detached unit.
Thank you.
Councillor Wojcik.
I think I'm understanding what the issue is here, and I think what is being said is it doesn't belong in this document. I think everybody's agreeing that there needs to be a definition, and there needs to be a clear definition with no ambiguity, but I think it belongs maybe in the as an official plan amendment, and then this document would reach out to that document to quantify it. I can see where this is a standalone document, and it doesn't refer to any other zoning within our township. So to have just an oversized park model trailer in this document doesn't make sense. I think it belongs in as an official plan amendment in the official plan bylaw.
But it does define park model trailer in the document.
Only, yes.
So if it's defining one, it needs to define both, to clear up the ambiguity.
Councillor Hazelton, all conversations should be through the chair.
But we don't have anybody from planning here, so I'm not sure that I'm accurate or not. Thank you.
To our staff, we're suggesting that an extra definition might be added to this document, and along with that definition, the different classification of development charge be applied to the larger park trailer home, if I can use that definition, park model home. What are the most practical steps here? Because obviously we'd like to pass this bylaw today, so we add an extra paragraph to our resolution asking for these changes, or do we have to wait for those changes to be included before we can pass this bylaw?
That would be the clerk to answer? We're trying to pass a bylaw. We're trying to pass a bylaw, so I'm not sure of the technicality of how you amend a bylaw.
Please.
We need to pass the bylaw today for sure, so if Stefan feels we can make those changes, we can, once you've debated all of it, I don't know if there's other issues besides Macy Bay, I would suggest you take a recess and we figure it out.
Councillors, other than the issue, Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Wienko.
Yeah, I'm concerned here. What we're suffering from is a lack of a definition for trailer or trailer-type home that exceeds 50 square meters. Stefan, you can say I'm wrong on this, but to my knowledge, there's no specific definition in the building code for anything greater than what they list here as a park model trailer in section 9.3.1.1. It'd be nice if there was a specific definition in the building code that we could refer to when we're adding anything to this. Or in the absence of that, and I'm agreeing with the councillors on the other side of the dais here, that we need to have a little further clarity in the definition for the park model trailer being no greater than 50 square meters.
Councillor Wienko?
Is Macy Bay done with, because I might continue with Macy Bay because I'm changing the topic completely, so let's finish with Macy Bay.
Okay. Councillor Wojcik?
I think once it reaches a certain GFA, it's no longer a park model trailer, is what we're getting at here. Park model trailer is designed as a unit with a maximum square meters. When it gets beyond that, it's no longer a park model trailer. It falls into the category of a resident home. So I don't know if we want to define park model trailers above whatever it was, 50 square meters or whatever, because it's no longer a park model trailer according to the definition.
I think part of the confusion is based on the OMB ruling. They referred to a park model trailer and then up to 100 square meters. So there was some conflict there, and therefore I think, or confusion, or however you want to word it, and therefore I think it makes sense for us to clarify in the development charge.
So we're still going to call anything that supersedes the description of a park model trailer. We're still gonna call it a park model trailer?
The proposal has been a park model home.
This doesn't just affect Macy's Bay.
Correct.
We have many other facilities in this township that have park model homes and trailers in them currently.
But this is affecting the development charges, so it wouldn't affect existing facility, it would only affect new construction, new facilities.
Which are official plans.
Councilor Jarvis.
Yeah, I just need a question here. Currently, the building code refers to a park model trailer in section whatever it is there. Is there the possibility, knowing our Ontario government currently, is there a possibility that that section, the description within that section could be changed? Which would include trailers in excess of 50 square meters, or is that just not possible given the section number, et cetera, within the building code? Do we know?
Anything can be changed. Councillor Hayston.
My reason for trying to suggest that we call it a park model home and include all of the references of the Z241 standard, except that it goes higher than 50 square meters, is because that is a simple way to align it with the OMB decision, because that was the clarity that the OMB decision provided. Nothing more, nothing less. They said specifically that these park model trailers had to be a Z241 standard, which has all kinds of implications into seasonal use and all kinds of other things, and towable and running gear and all the other stuff, removable running gear. But because they put this other thing in there of greater than 50 square meters, we need to find a simple way of reflecting it, and we've had way too much conversation on this topic. Can you imagine the building department having somebody come to them and say, this is what I'm doing, and engage in a half-hour conversation about it, when it could be so simple, park model home, done.
Are we ready to go on to other questions unrelated to the park model trailers / home? Councillor Cooper.
I believe you were suggesting that we, or Laurie was suggesting we take a short break to write this verbiage, or
Yes.
not? After the rest of it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wienko, your turn.
They should.
No, but let's try anyway.
I assume we're here to set the rate for the development charge today. I have a series of questions. What do we have in the account already for under development charges? What's in the bank right now? Approximately.
Through the chair, I believe it's around $3 million, but that's irrelevant, and that's been taken into account in the background study of future projects needed, as well as and that's why I believe it was for Public Works. There was no charge for that because there was enough in that pocket for Public Works.
Okay, the next question is, over the next 5 years, what funding do we need? What are the projects that we need funding for? And my third question would be, is how much do we need to collect? So,
Through the chair, that was in the information session as well as the public meeting. And I can bring that up. It was our capital works, which I believe is around, get it all together here. Pardon? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
just remind me.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at slide 8 of the presentation that I made at the public meeting. So the background study examined 6 services and examined $10 million of capital costs, of which we identified $4.9 million that could be funded through grants or subsidies, 1.7 million, which would have to be funded through the tax base because it represented a benefit to existing residents, or the 10% discount we have to apply. There's about $1 million in reserves available to fund those costs. There's another $500,000 that represents a benefit that's going to extend beyond the planning period that we have to look at. So the costs that are in the rates over the next 10 years is about $2 million.
So we're going to, so we have 3 million now.
You actually have 1 million now, and you are seeking to raise money to fund another 2.
And so now we have $3 million in capital over the next 5 years. And
Right.
how, and where is that earmarked? I'm sorry, I'm kind of on the presentation. So where, is that all earmarked?
Yes, all of the projects associated with those costs are set out in the background study.
Okay, so we have to charge full pop for all the development that you're proposing to raise that extra $2 million.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to fund it through development charges, yes, you'll have to impose these rates. If you want to fund a portion of it through development charges and a portion of it from some other source, almost certainly the property tax base, then you could impose lower rates.
What I was hoping to bring up today was the issue, we do have a campaign underway up in MacTier to try to bring in businesses and residents into MacTier for the next, 2 years, is it, the campaign? Maybe you can explain it in more detail, Jennifer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Move to MacTier campaign is a residential campaign, and it is an awareness campaign for phase 1 of the Move to MacTier. It will include banner advertising, local in-store advertising, and an opportunity to start dialogue with people who are interested in making the migration north. There's no direct incentives offered, nor could there be, for businesses, but what we're trying to do is just engage with people to start the conversation about why they might be considering moving, and then moving to MacTier as an option, because it's affordable in MacTier.
And so I was wondering if we can have a not charge development fees for the next 2 years for the town of MacTier, so we can encourage people to build in MacTier and possibly bring businesses to MacTier as part of that campaign. I don't know how much money we would lose as not being able to charge development costs, but it would be an incentive. It's probably the only incentive that this township could provide to that campaign. And the campaign would only be for 2 years, and I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
Who wants to go first?
Through the chair, perhaps Stefan could reply to the mechanics of that, but if they don't pay, somebody else does. But Stefan can provide the mechanics if we can area rate.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, you can do that. You can provide exemption on a geographic basis for the residential charges for any time period you choose. As your treasurer pointed out, you're still going to have the cost, so you've still got to raise the money. The money would almost certainly have to be raised from the property tax base across the entire municipality. I'm just looking at the background study to see if I can quickly quantify what the revenue loss would be, and we haven't actually broken out the residential unit growth by area within Georgian Bay, so I can't do that right now here at the table, but I need some time to be able to investigate that and see whether we've done that for the district forecasts.
CAO Kennard, and followed by EDO
Jennifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before we do too much work on that, I'd like to get a flavor of whether the majority of council would support that idea. It's certainly not one that staff would recommend because, again, you have to raise the money for elsewhere, and every area thinks they're special in their own way, which is why we do it uniformly. So I don't want to go too far down this path if there's not support at the council table.
Well, can I just finish with
Well, we should let Jennifer, respond as well, please.
Future, I would agree with the CAO. If there's an appetite for this particular campaign, then we should further the discussion. If there's not an appetite, then I think my lips are sealed.
Councilor
Well, I was
Bianco.
just going to say, if we can attract residents to MacTier and businesses to MacTier, which is difficult right now for any places. Well, I guess down in Port Seven is not that hard, but up in MacTier it's really hard to get anybody up there. That would increase our tax base just by having those new homes and so on. And we're not talking about hundreds of new homes. We're probably talking about maybe 10, 20 new homes up there. That would be, I would consider a success if we get that many homes and a few businesses up there. So it's not a great deal of expectations in residents moving up there, but it would be an incentive, and it would actually benefit our tax base as a result of that. So there might be a benefit of it, but I know there's a lot of people in MacTier have been, especially MDCDA, have been asking us for this and so on, and other members up there have been asking if we can have a hiatus for a couple of years on this while we do this campaign and see if we can attract some businesses up there to increase our tax base and so on.
I'm going to ask the fellow councillors if they have an appetite for this consideration. Councillor Cooper.
Well, I'm sort of deferring to what I'm hearing from our CAO and EDO with respect to having, where is the money going to come from? But perhaps Councillor Wianco would like to increase the rates for 6 Mile Lake so that it'll cover off the expense for MacTier. That's the only other way I can think of it.
I think the council should be more serious on this issue.
Well, I'm quite serious.
It's not a joke.
I'm quite serious, so I don't think it's
Thank you.
necessary. So there's my answer. Thank you.
Councillor Bocek.
I'm not too familiar with the development service charges in MacTier as far as what the district does up there as well too. I know in Port Severn, if you want to build on Honey Harbor Road, it's going to cost you this $5,000 plus another $10,000 a district. So, to raise that even more for the people around here to subsidize what we want to do up there, I think maybe a better approach to this would be, and I know staff is limited in time, but let's do some research on this and find out if there's a way to do some rebating or reimbursing based on certain criteria and that type of thing, instead of just giving a handout that's going to cost someone else money. Maybe there could be a plan in place to help the people in MacTier without, foregoing their service charges. So I think it's a topic that's important, but it probably needs a little more scrutiny than a cow discussion about development services charges. So I'm not sure if it can happen this year. I would support something in MacTier to try and ease the burden of getting development done up there, but at the expense of other people in the township. I think that's the quandary that we're in. So that's my point. I don't think today we should move ahead with something.
EDO Schneider.
My only comment about being selective of what communities versus what communities, it's very difficult. In the end game, if you could be consistent across the board with what you decide to do, and if you decide to have a specific one-off, then it's for a specific one-off for a specific period of time. But please don't, or please consider being consistent with the remainder of your message as an EDO trying to attract business. The development charges are assumed. A lot of developers are coming from the city. The flip side of everything is that we shouldn't really be giving away Muskoka. It's a premier location. We have some development of land that is still available in the L postal code, which is very attractive for distribution. And keep in mind that we're already in an area where there is significantly reduced housing cost. I have to say about that.
Councillor Jarvis.
Just for providing an opinion, I'm with Councillor Bocek on this, and that, well, I like the idea. I think attracting residents to MacTier, as you're suggesting and doing, is a marvelous idea. I think it will work for a lot of people trying to find more economical housing outside the city. But I am really, really not keen on the idea of having other people in the municipality pay for that. So And I would like to know more detail on what the district, how the district levies development charges as well. Thanks.
Through the chair, the district has one cost across the township currently, but their bylaw is currently under review. I doubt they would go into the area rating as well.
Councillor Hazelton.
In the interest of trying to spearhead some development and growth in the township, I think there is merit in identifying areas of the township where we want to put a focus on growth and try to support that growth. And I can envision, maybe naively, I don't know, but I can envision that there could be rotating areas of focus. And so maybe we need to have a couple of years of focus in MacTier and try to launch that area and get it back on its feet. And then maybe we focus on another area. But I like the concept of let's try to put a focal point in an area and get that back on its feet. And then maybe there are other areas that need that. So I would be supportive of this concept.
I find myself having great concern in this regard simply because if we try to give a particular location a 2-year development charge holiday, the trouble is, as we've seen with many developments in front of us over the past little while, it takes them 5-10 years sometimes to get these going. And therefore, you know, saying to some place that they have a 2-year development charge break probably is only going to benefit people who've started their programs half a dozen years ago and they'll do their best to get them online. I also don't know how we distinguish, without being very careful, between, say, waterfront lots in MacTier and more rural lots, or any other part of the township. And I think that we have to be very, very careful if we're going to give particular breaks to a particular area. My one question that I'm going to ask to staff is, if we pass a development charge without any breaks, is there an option, or are we allowed to, in the future, at a future meeting, decide that we're going to give a temporary break to a particular area in spite of the umbrella development charge bylaw being in place?
To you, yes, you always have the ability to waive anything, but you'd be setting precedents. So yes, you have the ability.
C.O.W.
Thank you. I also should remind you that in the last development charge bylaw, we issued we didn't charge it on the commercial for 2 years and it did nothing. So council tried to do something and didn't do anything, which is typical to the research that the development charges aren't making or breaking people's decisions to come anywhere.
I'm going to make the suggestion to council, and looking for nodding heads, that perhaps we don't include breaks in the development charge bylaw, but not saying that we're totally, the door's not slammed shut if sometime down later in the term there is an application made for a potential break in a particular situation. Is it now the appropriate time for us to take a brief recess and allow the staff to add the park model home definition to the bylaw? Councillor Cooper.
I just have one question for the Director of Finance. Earlier on, you mentioned something about it is yet to be decided about the cost for the roads, I think is what you said. And it is yet to be decided by whom? Can you indicate that to me? That's ambiguity again that I'd like to understand.
C.O.W.
I'll answer that one. It'll come out of the peer reviews, right? It'll depend what the studies say about what the road upgrades need. We haven't seen that yet.
But that decision will come back to council.
Yes.
Thank you.
If peer review doesn't support it, though, then you'll have an appealable decision. But it is council's decision for sure.
Thank you.
Council, we're now prepared to recess while the bylaw gets modified to incorporate the park model home discussion. Okay, I'm going to call a recess. How much time do you think you might need to make this change so that we can pass the bylaw? Okay, well, so how much time do you need? 5 minutes?
I need to discuss what I'm actually writing, so yeah, at least 5 minutes.
Okay, let's recess until 10 to 10. That's a 10-minute recess. Council, everyone, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We have a couple of proposed modifications to the bylaw. And Stefan, I believe you're the one who's going to explain the two alternatives we have before us.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you're going to actually have three options in front of you. First will be the bylaw that you received as part of the package for today's, so the unchanged bylaw. The second one will modify the existing definition of park model trailer with a clause at the end which will say, for greater clarity, any park model trailer greater than 50 square meters is to be treated as a single-family detached unit for the purposes of this bylaw. So in other words, it just will add clarity to the existing definition to make sure that any trailer that's bigger than 50 square meters is going to get the higher charge. And your third option will be to include a new definition over and above the park model trailer definition. And the new definition will be for a park model home. And the definition will read, a park model home is a park model trailer with an area greater than 50 square meters. And for greater clarity, a park model home is to be classified as a single-family detached unit for the purposes of this bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton. Oh, sorry, I thought you had your hand raised. But I'll ask then for one more clarification. If I understood it correctly from the discussion, there was a certain hesitation to include a park model home as a definition or bylaw simply because nowhere else in law are you aware of that definition existing. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the reason for changing the park model trailer definition was to tie it to the building code, where you have a clear reference to the specifications and you have a definition in the code itself. I think it's perhaps overkill, but I am always concerned when a development charge bylaw takes the lead on something like this, defining something for the first time. My view is that, this is essentially a taxing bylaw, it's a municipal finance bylaw. It's not the place where a land use planning definition should appear for the first time. So that's why we've given you that second option, which simply modifies the existing definition. But, given some of the councillors' concerns, obviously we've given you the third option as well. So,
thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you for all that work. I very much appreciate it. I will just offer that in hearing your reading of the third option, to me that is the simplest, clearest, cleanest, and most aligned with what I think we need to achieve here for simplicity in the township. So, and it doesn't define anything different. By the way, it only aligns with the OMB decision. So we are not, and I am not trying to do anything in the way of defining something new, only to connect and align with a definition from this higher body, the OMB, that have directed us to use these new parameters. So thank you very much for that.
Councillor Cooper.
I just echo those comments. I think if we can bring greater clarity, and I understand what you're saying, and I thank you for your efforts, and I understand the issue with respect to muddying, or not muddying the waters, but maybe this isn't the role of this particular development charge bylaw. But on the other hand, given the circumstances, I think the most clarity that we can achieve, I'd like to see that. So the third option would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Gentlemen, you've referred to the third option. Is the third option the one that has a park model home definition, or is it the one that says that a park model trailer cannot exceed 50 square meters and anything above 50 square meters is a single family dwelling unit?
It was the third one that was read to us.
Which is park model home.
So the two of you are in favor of adding a park model home definition to our bylaw?
Right.
Councilor Jarvis.
While I'm agreeing with both Councilor Hazelton and Cooper in many respects, I'm a little concerned about the implications of providing a sort of independent definition for something that isn't in the building code at this time, and what the possibility is for a challenge from a developer to that definition, as opposed to just providing the similar clarity as you did in option 2, which just indicated that the park model trailer would not exceed 50 square meters. So that's my concern, is the challengeability of one of those two options versus the other. And I don't know if there is any advantage to one or the other, but that's my only question.
Does anyone wish to comment on that? Councilor Hazelton.
Could you reread that, what we're calling option 3, the last paragraph, just so that we can have it clear in our minds again, please?
Option 3 currently reads, and that council adds a definition of park model home in the bylaw to read, park model home is a park model trailer with an area greater than 50 meters squared. A park model home is to be classified as a single-family dwelling unit for the purpose of this bylaw.
So if I could, that doesn't provide any new or unique definitions. It only aligns with the OMB decision. So it's not creating anything new. There's a label for simplicity, but it's referring explicitly to what the OMB said, which is a park model trailer greater than 50 square meters. So there's no ambiguity there.
Councilor Jarvis.
With respect, I'm seeing more ambiguity. Does the OMB, I'm trying to recall the OMB decision, I haven't got it in front of me. Do they specifically label a unit greater than 50 square meters as a park model home? If not, then we have created a new definition for a new entity entirely, correct, Stefan? Okay, so I'm worried that here we are independently creating a new item for the building code effectively. Whereas if we go with option 2, all we're doing is providing the singular clarity that a park model trailer does not exceed 50 square meters. And if you're going to go above that, then your development taxes, development charge is different.
Councilor Cooper.
I just, maybe we can get some clarity from our consultant, but I don't believe that we're adding anything to the building code. I think we're trying to bring some clarity to our development charges bylaw as it pertains to trailer parks. So I don't see any place here where we're changing the building code. Secondly, I think it would be useful, though, to answer your question, which is what sort of mechanism is there to challenge this particular bylaw if we do it in the third option versus the second option? Perhaps you could answer that question as well. Thank you.
Please.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, if you pass the bylaw today, there'll be a 40-day period where anyone can appeal any provision of the bylaw, including the rates and the definitions. I'm not in a position to say whether this will increase the likelihood of an appeal or not. Frankly, I just, that's too speculative for me.
The second question was with respect to the building code. How is this having any? The building code is the building code.
Oh, right. So through you, Mr. Mayor, no, you're not changing the building code at all.
Thank you.
By introducing option 3. But nor are you referencing anything specific in the building code either.
Council, can I make the assumption that none of you are in favor of the, I'll call it option 1 unchanged bylaw, that you all want to see clarification around the park model trailer? So then our next choice is between option 2 and option 3. And I will comment that I find myself favoring option 2, and the reason I favor option 2 is simply because in option 3 we're creating a new definition which I think could lead to ambiguity,
See,
Thank
I'm
you.
not the only one.
You're not the only one, and I'll blame you entirely. Confusion, because it's a brand-new definition, and I think that would almost encourage people to say, well, what does this actually mean? And even though I agree that it's been made very clear, it's a park model trailer that's larger than 50 square meters, but then we start getting to the debate, you know, I just think that by not creating a new definition, because I'm quite sure park model home was not in the OMB reading, it was a park model trailer that they've made specific reference to in one paragraph, and the next paragraph they mention 100 square meters, which is somewhat confusing. Councillor Hazelton.
I'm good with 2, let's go.
Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, I'm fine with number 2. I think number 3 is belt and suspenders, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read this, and I'm hoping that we can pass it. It's lengthy. Be it resolved that council intends to ensure that the increase in the need for services attributable to the anticipated development will be met, subject to sufficient development charges, revenues being generated, and other township affordability criteria being met. And that council adopts the assumptions contained in the 2019 development charges background study, including anticipation of receipt of specific capital grants, subsidies, and other contributions. And that council, having considered the use of area-specific development charges, continues to calculate the development charges on a uniform township-wide basis for all services. And that council receives and approves under Section 10 of the Development Charges Act 1997, the 2019 Development Charges Background Study dated March 15, 2019. And that council approves the capital project listing set out in Section 5 of the Development Charges Background Study dated March 15, 2019, subject to further annual review during the capital budget process. And that, having received the final draft of the Development Charges Bylaw and having held a statutory public meeting on April 9, 2019, council confirms that no further public meetings are required pursuant to Section 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997. And that council adopts bylaw 2019-64 as presented, being a bylaw to establish development charges for the Township of Georgian Bay. And that council amends the definition of park model trailer in the bylaw to read, park model trailer means a manufactured building designed and constructed in conformance with CAN/CZA-Z2 41 series park model trailers, and is used or intended to be used as a seasonal recreational building of residential occupancy pursuant to Section 9.38.1.1 of the Ontario Building Code. For greater clarity, any park model trailer greater than 50 meters squared is to be classified as a single-family dwelling unit. Councillor Hazelton?
It's CSA, not CZA.
I have CSAZ2.
Sorry, I thought you read CZA.
I might have, but I didn't mean to.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. You have a comment to add?
I do. I'd like to put out a real significant thank you to our consultant and our CFO to help us, to have helped us through this matter for clarity, which I think is extremely important in our township, given what we are facing and the huge length of time and effort that has been gone into trying to deal with the Macy Bay matter. This clarity, I think, has been extremely important, and thank you very much for that.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I do have a question with regards to development charges in general. I think with the new building or bill coming out from the provincial government, are not development charges being reduced generally across the board and deferred as well? And will that affect, how will that affect us in the future?
Through the chair, I'll start. Stefan can pipe in. There were two items there I think you said about being reduced. I did speak to that, how they are proposing to eliminate the soft service development charges for libraries, parks and recreation, and general government. So if that happens and we don't implement the new community benefit charge, of which I'm not clear on yet, then all those funds for all those studies, library books would have to come out of taxation. And the second one was the timing. So they're proposing that it's at the earlier of site plan or zoning bylaw, rather than they would still pay it at building permit, but the rate would be in effect at site plan or zoning bylaw time. And I think that's primarily to benefit, say, the condo corporations that have a long build-out. I think that's the thinking behind that. Stefan, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything else to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I think Jane has set it out. Just in terms of how this will affect the township specifically, yes, the soft services are being taken out of the development charge framework. And there'll be a new framework through which you can raise money to pay for those capital costs, which is the community benefits charge. We don't know whether your ability will be constrained or increased by that switch. Here in Georgian Bay, 75% of your residential charge is roads and fire, which are unaffected by this. And 71% of your non-residential charge is roads and fire. So you're a little more insulated from the changes than others. When it comes to the timing of payment, yes, the development charge payable to the township will now be frozen at the point of site plan approval or the zoning bylaw amendment approval. You'll still pay at building permit, but you'll pay on the basis of whatever was due at that earlier time. The only other thing perhaps to mention is that development charges for all non-residential development, as well as rental housing and not-for-profit housing, will be paid in 6 equal installments from the moment of building permit. So that's going to make things administratively a little more challenging, I'm sure, for those kinds of payments.
Councilor Jarvis?
Further clarification, my understanding of the new bill was that development charges would not be payable until occupation. Have I got that wrong?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the first installment is due at building permit, but this is the amended legislation here, so, and first reading was 10 days ago, so I can check that for you and get back to you.
I would also like to add my thanks to all the work that went into this over the last few months, and greatly appreciate it, and your education of the, especially of the new councillors, it's quite appreciated. And with that, be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2019-65, being a bylaw confirming the proceedings of the May 14th, 2019 special meeting. All those in favor? Carried. Be it resolved, the council does now adjourn at 10:13 a.m. until Tuesday, June 11th at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Let's start. Let's. I think we've already had our recess, so let's. Yeah. Why do you need a break? Okay.
You had a recess. Exactly. That was my point.
We might take a recess during the upcoming thing. Okay, so that's
Paul, can you see a sentence in the
Okay, I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And the first resolution I have is Or do we do the delegations before that we do this agenda?
Yep.
Okay. I would ask if any councillors have any declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we're going to go into the delegations portion. On our agenda, we listed 5 delegations, and it's my understanding that the 5th delegation, with regards to lagoon issues, that Bob Murrell was unable to attend today, and so that will not be taking place. I would like to remind both our delegators, if that's the right term, and our council that delegations are restricted to 10 minutes. That 10 minutes does not include any questions from council. However, council would not be making any proposals or decisions as a consequence of your delegations at this time. We'll simply ask for some questions of clarity. If there's any action to come from that, that would be at a later meeting. So these delegations are for information only, and I trust that our clerk will be restricting you to 10 minutes. So if you run over, I'm afraid you may hear about it. And with that, our first delegation, Philip Matthews, Board Chair, and Natalie Bubella, CEO of Muskoka Health Network. The floor is yours.
This is where we control the slides?
There should be a clicker up there. Yep.
Yes, there is. Thank you. Your Worship, thank you very much for giving us this time, and members of the council. We will make sure it's 10 minutes.
Microphone? If you could just turn it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you again, and we'll keep this to 10 minutes. I'm the chair of the board of Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare, and Natalie is the CEO, and we're just going to take you through where we stand at this point in time and what we're planning to do over the next few years. The next slide, which hopefully can work. If you can read this slide, this is what happens at MAC. We're a very busy hospital. We have 96 beds spread between Bracebridge and Huntsville. We have about 650 employees, 340 volunteers. The volumes that go through MAC are such that in terms of emergency visits, we have about 125 emergency visits per day. We have 103 x-rays a day, and we have 1,285 lab tests a day. At the moment, we are seeing that long-term care and ALC, which is the big issue around the province, we are about 25 to 30 people over where we should be at any point in time. This is a huge problem for all hospitals in Ontario, us in particular. Our budget's about 80 million. We are always faced with funding issues because the province doesn't fund all of the services that we provide. The last few years we've managed to keep our annual operations in a positive position, but again the budget for next year is looking like another deficit. In today's operations, the healthcare industry is in huge flux with the changes that the Conservative government have brought down, and we're no different. So we're still waiting to see how all of this is going to shape up with the hospital going forward. In terms of sorry, I'm not very adept at this. Quality is our main issue at Muskoka. All we do is aimed at maintaining the quality of our operations. And what I'd like to do is give Natalie a chance to tell you about quality for a few minutes.
Morning. Thank you for having us here. As Phil indicated, quality is absolutely our #1 focus in the organization, and as a result of that, we do participate in accreditation surveys that occur every 4 years, and all hospitals in Ontario as well as Canada participate in this. And as a result of our participation in this, we were accredited just before Christmas, and we received the highest award one can get for accreditation, and that is accredited with exemplary standing, which was a great testament to the focus on quality in our organization. And I'm really grateful to our frontline staff, physicians, and volunteers for providing this type of quality care to our community. As Phil indicated, we're no different than many other medium-sized hospitals in Ontario, including the Georgian Bay General Hospital. And we have had deficits pretty well every year, but managed to balance at the year end through one-time funding, and this year is no exception. We were forecasting a deficit of about 2.5 million, and we actually ended up the year with a positive variance. It's what the ministry or Premier Ford calls March Madness. In February, March, we received significant one-time funding, which allowed us to balance. But my understanding is for this year, it's been made very clear in the funding letters that have come out to hospitals that there will no longer be a March Madness at the end of the year. And whatever was allocated in terms of the budget letters that came out last week to all hospitals in Ontario, that is the amount of money that you will have. And so we are anticipating a real deficit this year in 1920. Our current needs in terms of capital is about 9 million. So that has to do with like capital equipment, x-ray machines, oximeters for oxygen, that type of thing. And we have about $40 million in infrastructure investments that are required across our two sites, the hospital in Huntsville and the hospital in Bracebridge. We do rely on fundraising from our foundations and our auxiliaries in order to help support that 9 million and the 40 million in investments that are required. And there is HIRF funding available, that's hospital infrastructure relief funding that all hospitals in Ontario do get. We got just over about $500,000 this year, and there are specific projects that you have to submit in advance and be funded to do. And you can see some examples on the slide of the types of things that we have had funded through HIRF in the past. Nowhere near the $40 million in investments that are required, but we're thankful for every donation and every dollar that comes in from the ministry. These are just some examples of donor funds and actions of different pieces of equipment that have been bought based on the generosity of our community. And again, just wanted to highlight our volunteers. Our volunteers have provided in excess of, I'm just going to double check the number here, I don't want to give you the wrong number, 44,000 hours of volunteer hours last year between the two sites. We have two distinct volunteer groups, and we're very, very grateful to the support that they provide the hospital, not just in terms of some of the funding that they provide, but the actual hands-on care that they provide in terms of portering people, wayfinding, et cetera, in the organization. Phil?
Right, this 10 minutes is tough, I'll tell you. We're in the middle of two parts of planning. We do a 5-year strategic plan every 5 years, and this is what we're into right now. This is the one that's ended in this particular fiscal year. Again, quality and patient care is number one. We've been working on this revised plan now for about a year. We've had surveys, we've talked to doctors, staff, you name it. So this is being reviewed, revised, and by June of this year we should have a new model. The big thing is that we're working on a future capital plan for the two hospitals. These hospitals, Bracebridge is 56 years old, Huntsville is 45 years old. They do not meet today's standards for healthcare delivery. They're too small. If we were to try and duplicate what we have right now, the size would be double for each hospital. That's an issue for us in terms of providing the quality of healthcare that we want to provide. We have issues like infection control, etc., that we cannot deal with properly with the size of the hospital we have right now. So we are in the middle of a capital plan process that lasts for probably 15, 20 years. We've been working on this for 7 years. We're at stage 1B of this. This is the capital plan given to us by the Capital Planning Department of the Ministry. We're at the stage now, we've decided that the plan will contain 2 distinct acute care hospitals, one in Huntsville and one in Bracebridge. We've now gone through what should be in the boxes in terms of the services and how it's configured. We're now at the point of deciding which of the various models we will pick to go forward to the ministry with the price tags and how we're going to fund what's called the local share. So this process has got 6 distinct steps, and at each step the ministry requires us to rethink where we're at. Technology in healthcare changes almost every day. So every one of these steps we'll be rethinking the model that we put in front of everybody and saying how can we refine, how can we make this thing better? Because, as I said at the beginning, healthcare is changing rapidly. Getting rid of the LHINs, making a central Ontario health team organization will change the shape of this hospital going forward. And these steps give us the opportunity to stop, think, and change. As I said, we've now come up to the decision it's going to be 2 acute sites, and there'll be complete service hospitals at each site. This was a reflection of the community reaction to a one-site model that we proposed back in 2015. Access to care in our community, as you know, because of geography, is huge. Access is the biggest problem that we face in getting the patient to the right place at the right time. So that's the result. We rethought the whole model and came up with 2 acute sites. Natalie?
So just in this section, what we're doing, as Phil indicated, we know what the models are. Now it's just understanding what the bricks and mortar would be and the business case and the facility development plan that's required. So there are 5 options that the task force is looking at. 2 of them are the same across both sites. It's a renovation and expansion of the current building, both in Huntsville and in Bracebridge, or replacing the building on the current land that the current hospital is on. There is a 3rd option for South Muskoka because we are landlocked down there. We have about 11 to 12 acres, and that would be to build a new building on a new parcel of land someplace within Bracebridge itself. So those are the 5 options that are being looked at. You can see here for South Muskoka, the gray building is the current building. We would be building to the back where the helipad is. Closer to Liddard Street would be the model if we were to build brand new on that site. And in the Huntsville site, it would be over going to the side of the building along where there's a little bit flatter land because there's a fair amount of stone and elevation on that property. And there's about 40 acres in Huntsville. And these are some guiding principles which I will not read out to you, but there are principles that are being utilized by the task force to decide which of the 5 options will be selected for the new build at each of the sites. And we do have significant stakeholder involvement. We've gone out, we've had over 1,000 people that we met with. When we were presenting the models, we had the architects and other consultants with us so people could ask questions. Once we have picked the preferred model for building, we will then submit it to the Ministry of Health. And last slide is just if you want to stay in touch with what we're doing, here are some ways to connect with the hospital. We just wanted to make sure that we came today to give you an opportunity. We know that we do serve some of your community at each of our 2 hospitals, not many in comparison to the other municipalities that we serve, but we wanted to ensure that you were aware and had any opportunities to ask questions of us should you have any.
Thank you very much. I'll have you know that just as you flicked to the last slide, the alarm went, so I think you did well. And before I turn it over to my fellow councilors, one of the last things you mentioned, serving members, residents of our township. Do you have any stats on that? How many of our residents actually end up in one of your hospitals?
So the last year's stats would be less than 50, either being served within the emergency department or being admitted as an inpatient.
Because as I'm sure you appreciate, we have a lot more residents to go either to Parry Sound or Midland, and therefore we're a little sensitive to the fact that the Highway 11 corridor is of some distance. Councillors, anyone? Councillor Cooper.
Well, I actually have the same question, but I compliment you for actually tracking that because we have asked other hospitals and not had an answer. So good for you for that, and thank you for your work.
Councillor Jarvis.
Is there any consideration, I'm not sure the distance between the 2 hospitals, and I know because I happen to spend a lot of time in Collingwood that they went through significant trials and tribulations trying to determine what they were going to do with their new hospital. Is there any consideration with consolidating and then just having 1 facility as opposed to 2?
After about 4 to 5 years of planning, that wasn't the decision that the board made for a variety of reasons. As Phil indicated, access was still a real concern for us with that decision, but in 2015, the board did select 1 option, 1 hospital built someplace in the middle. That was not well received. The ministry did ask us to go back and look at this again, and we developed at that point a task force that involved municipal representation, community representation, board, foundations, patients and families that are receiving care on this 24-member task force. And as a result of that, the decision was made to build 2 hospitals and 1 in each of the communities.
If I might add, I was the chair of the one-site committee, and I used to have a lot of hair, but that was a real challenge to the community and to the ministry. The ministry gave us indications that the one-site model was the one they were preferring, but at the end of the day, they caved into popular comments and municipal support.
Councillor Cooper.
Just briefly, under your deliberations, did you also take into consideration the adjacency of Aurelia and North Bay? Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, very much so.
So we absolutely looked at what the market share loss might be, depending on what option you selected. We looked at economic analysis as well in terms of economic impact, based on any of the models, including the one or a two-site approach. We had significant analysis done in our process. That's why it's taken us so long, 7 years into what should hopefully be about a 15-year process, and we're only at stage 1.
We also capture all the demographics of where customers come from. We have all the postal addresses of every patient that we treat, so that's how we can test where the market is and who we have to serve.
Well, thank you very much for coming down to Port Severn and presenting us with this information. I think we all are more informed, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Hope we don't see you in the hospital, huh?
Next on our list is Rick C.O.W. with regards to Honey Harbor issues. And Mr. C.O.W., I don't think you were here when I reminded everybody that delegations are restricted to 10 minutes, not including council questions, and that no decisions or proposals are to be made by council this time. It's just to collect the information you have to offer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. My name is Rick C.O.W. My name's Mr. C.O.W., and I'm coming back to the area because I lived here all my life until the past 30 years. I moved away, and I'm coming back to retire up here, and all I've seen is the lack of infrastructure for Honey Harbor, clean drinking water, affordable housing. These are needs, not wants. The people of Honey Harbor, mainland people. And I've seen devastation to the well waters, and I tried in the fall. I spoke with this gentleman over here, the head of roads, excuse me, I don't know his name, and he told me there was nothing wrong with the situation. Port Severn Estates and along the Honey Harbor Road. Well, the lack of ditching up there has polluted the ground source water and left this family without bathing water and drinking water all winter. And I tried in the fall to get this rectified, and they still have bad drinking water. They just got their water back that I worked on. I'm trying to clean the well, but the ditching that's along that road has contaminated this water, so they couldn't even bath for a couple months. Is that right? For drinking water. After me bringing it to the attention in the fall that this was going to happen. And I don't know what happened. I have pictures here I'd like to share with council to show you the garbage. And across the road there's been a landscape business with fertilizers in the water, and it's contaminated the water. Her father died of contaminants, industrial contaminants of some sort. Now her brother's sick. And all I want right now is if you can send a backhoe up there so I can get them. I've installed a safe drinking water system at my cost. This family needs it. And we need ditching up there as soon as possible so I can work on this well and refurbish it and bring it back to acceptable standards, because I go back testing the water again this spring or this summer with the hot, really warm temperatures. I'd hate to say this, but we might see E. coli pop up. And I've got credentials through Walkerton to conduct this kind of survey. And it's very troubling to me that I had to go to the Ministries of Environment, Natural Resources, because I couldn't come here and sit and explain to you what's actually going on the mainland. And this needs to be rectified, and we need to put some more money and put the heart back into Honey Harbor, where it's been taken out right now. There's no places to buy. There's 10 people up there that are in their 80s living out by themselves because there's no affordable housing. What's gone on for 30 years? I come back to council, no disrespect, but they're all from Toronto. And they've neglected the needs, not the wants of people. And I'm here to see if there's anything that can be done to get this family clean drinking water, safe bathing drinking water. And I speak from the heart, don't break nothing down. And this is where I'm at right now. How many months did you have to go without water?
January to the middle of April.
And I predicted this in October. The flooding was going to be severe this year. And look at what we got. Look at the area, the flooding. I got this documented on paper, times, the dates. And I would really, really, if you could do something to help this cause of the needs, not the wants of the area. Thank you for your time.
If you remain seated, the council may have some questions for you.
Thank you.
Councillor? Councillor Jarvis.
I'm curious, and I really appreciate the photos and the documentation you provided. Are there potentially other residences that are affected by this water quality specific issue? I mean, you brought one family in, but I'm just wondering if ongoing, with more development coming on, I'm not sure about the water supply situation for any new residences. I am curious to know what your opinion is, though.
It's taken place all along the Honey Harbor Road. There's wells that are on municipal properties. Now, when you pollute one well, that goes into your ground source. You can drill a well 10 feet away. It's going to pollute it after a while, the same way. I know people that had 3 wells up in Honey Harbor, and these are seniors, and it's a burden. It's even a burden to put in a water treatment where you have to spend $50 a month. What I've seen is the sewers come down to Port Severn and service what? New development? How many citizens did that provide water for compared to Honey Harbor? I have no answers. That's what I'm here for today. And another thing is the lack of ditching going up to Honey Harbor. You just have to take a ride up here a kilometer and see the devastation of lands that have been in the family, my family, for decades, hundreds of years. And I come back to see Port Severn Estates, and the people that live in that area watch this happen right in front of their front windows. And they didn't see a problem in that. And I brought it to the attention, there is a big problem. There's 2 outdoor toilets that are in that pond. And I know one of them for a fact was my uncle's. And that pond was never there. It's polluting all the groundwater. And people don't know this that are living there, especially people living right near to that marsh or bog they created. I used to skydive there. I used to walk out to the outdoor toilet to do my business and go back skydiving. That pond was never there. It's just decimated the area. People that have seen this happen, it's almost like a revenge. I would like to see you clean that. Just take a ride up there. That's not normal. If that took place anywhere in the city, everybody would band together. But these people have been so beaten down for so many years that they're scared to come up here and speak like I'm speaking. I'm the only representative they have had in 30 years. So people that have been up here for 30 years should actually sit down and walk the walk with me to see what actually is going on in Honey Harbor. Because they were displaced from Bosley Island years ago. Honey Harbor, further away from amenities. Now they're being displaced out of Georgian Bay Township to Coldwater, Midland. Because there's no old people's homes up here. And the need is here, and the need is here for a health hub that nobody knows of. They had one here that didn't pan out. But people from Honey Harbor that's been beaten down won't come down here to use their services. And this is where I'm at. Me coming here can open some eyes, and let's move ahead on these issues and look after the people, the original people that were here, instead of displacing them out of the Georgian Bay Township now.
Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Mr. C.O.W, for coming in and sharing this with us. I did look up your water quality tests, and it was talking about an address of 1226 Honey Harbor Road.
That's the...
And that looks to me like it's about 400 or 500 meters past the turnoff to Macy Bay Road, is that?
Yeah.
That's about right. So that's one location, but I get the feeling from how you've been speaking to us that there may be several locations of concern. I'm just thinking that it may be helpful for us to have a collection of addresses. But before I ask you that, I'm going to ask our Director of Operations. Can you comment on what your observations are on that address area, 1226 Honey Harbor Road, and is there something that we as a township have done or should be doing in that area?
Sorry, I'm just looking up on the map on the
So it's about 400 or 500 meters past the turnoff to Macy Bay as you're heading into Honey Harbor. At least that's what Google's telling me.
Yeah, that looks like what Google is telling me. I don't believe we have done any work with respect to drainage in that area. I'd have to take a better look. I had spoken to Mr. C.O.W about some... Pardon? I had spoken to Mr. C.O.W about another area further down Honey Harbor Road, near Hillside Crescent, which I believe he mentioned today. But this area here, I don't believe that we've done any work there.
Okay, so just kind of a general comment, both to staff and to Mr. C.O.W. I hear you about this issue with the wells being polluted. We probably want to try to understand that a little bit better. I know of, from talking to other residents farther into the hamlet area, that they have issues of the aquifers drying up in the summertime and having no access to water, or limited access to water. At least that has been a pattern in the past. So it kind of sounds to me like the problem may be something that we need to document further, because so you've got one water sample here, or two water samples here, that define a problem in one area, but it sounds like there may be other problems up and down the roadway, and sometimes it's easier to create effort and action when we have a broader scope of understanding of not a single point problem, but a broader problem. And with that broader set of information, then we perhaps may be finding it easier to direct action to remediate things or correct it or whatever. I mean, I don't know what the answers are. Certainly I find it very concerning that wells are polluted. I also find it very concerning that aquifers run dry. And the fact that we don't have an easy way of providing municipal water or sewer to that geography is another problem that we've wrestled with in the past, I know, but not prior to this council. But there may be some other strategies that we can look at to help out in that area. But I think from my perspective, what I would like to receive, if possible, is other examples of other problems up and down the roadway. I'll kind of defer a little bit to that pond area that you talked about down by Hillside Drive or whatever the
Severn Estates,
Severn Estates.
you just take a look at that, all the grounds.
Yeah, I mean, I have to confess, when I saw that they were selling lots backing onto a pond where it didn't look like there was any big building envelope, I was kind of wondering what was going on there, but I don't know if they were done, but you have any insight into that?
You can ask me that question again, I have a disability.
So I'm just confused as to why those properties backing onto that pond where there doesn't look like there's any real building envelope, how is it that those properties became eligible for sale in the first place, given that they are, I'm guessing, maybe have no building envelope?
Yeah, I understand the question now. Yeah, it seems like I did some courses in water, quite a few, and I'm pretty good at journeying the runoffs and that. But there's a whole issue like crushed culverts. I've counted many of them that are all plugged up. They've never been cleaned. Where most municipalities, every couple of years, they take a sucker, they clean it, line it with gravel. But in 30 years, there's not been one bit of ditching. And they're trying to pull the weeds out by hand. While pulling the weeds out, like Township comes along and cuts the weeds, and that ditch has got filled and filled. And if you look at this here and study this here, source water protection overview, I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. Take a look in there on first page on the back side. It'll show you how Port Severn Estates and the people living there I would highly recommend them to check their wells this summer. Because this is showing how many feet and meters that pond is moving out, and it was a man-made pond. And I think there should be further environmental studies done before any more building goes there, because we're running on 30-year outdated plans. I painted the first 2 houses in there. I was a painter in the area. I know the area, and that's not natural, that pond. Outdoor toilets, there's a well underneath there. And this is polluting the ground source water to all the wells that are around that area. And it's in the water ground source.
Councillor Bochek.
I know we're not going to create any policies or move forward with any action plans coming out of this COW meeting, but I see one common thread here in that I'm reading over the public health reports, and there's, in these 2 reports for these 2 addresses, it both shows coliform. One of these addresses, I believe, is on town sewer and water. So all these buildings had septic beds. All these houses had septic beds at one time or another. When they hooked up to the city sewer and water, to the town sewer and water, perhaps there wasn't proper decommissioning of the septic systems, and as they flood due to groundwater, that you're leaking the coliform into the drinking water. Remember that coliform is only from warm-blooded animals. It's from humans and from other warm-blooded animals. So I really think our building department should probably get involved, make sure that the septic system, inspect the septic systems, and make sure that they're in proper working condition, or completely decommissioned and removed if they're on city sewers and water. But the 2 documents here that are addressing pollution in the wells both relate to coliform. So I think we should be looking at that. Thank you.
Councillor Yanko.
Just to clarify for Councillor Bochek, the total coliforms you see there, that is runoff, that's dirt. That's dirt. The E. coli, which is 0 on both of those, that is from the warm-blooded animals. So there's no fecal contamination of these samples. There is runoff, a low amount of runoff contamination. I think the provincial criteria is around 100, something like that. I think it's 1,000 for recreation and about 100 for, I'll stand corrected there, but it's well above these values that are quoted here. So these values aren't surprising for an average household. So, but there's no fecal, which is the most important one.
Right. Just in response to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, is that the very definition of coliform is that it is from a warm-blooded, I have the definition in front of me here, and it says that it is only from a human or warm-blooded animal.
That's E. coli.
And I'm not challenging you because I know you're a
I know,
biologist.
it says E. coli. You read the coli.
It says-
Total
Okay,
coliform.
gentlemen, I think we're coming up with a matter that's worthy of offline pursuit.
Yeah, sure, and going back to my point, if there is contamination in these wells, I think it's, we gotta find out where it's coming from. That's the most important thing.
Mr. Cadeau?
I've worked on this case for about 6 months now, and if you notice, the dates on the water testing was taken in the fall. Now, this summer, if we have a nice hot summer, above average summer, and I go back to these wells, and I know for a fact there's one that's come back with E. coli. Now, that's a provincial matter. And if I go back testing again this summer when it's warm, you're gonna see that I wouldn't even give it to my pets, the water that's coming out of the taps. Even with the systems on it, it's clogging up their system so badly. And it's the lack of ditching, the runoff. Across from this address, there's been a landscape business for many years. And some of the fertilizers they used back then, you could see through that, find toads and snakes and up there. And that's leaching into their water. Because of the ditching. Ditching, if you go up there, there's crush, culverts. There's been no maintenance at all along that Harbor Road. And you just have to take a walk at the culverts and take a look at them.
Mr. Cadeau, I'm going to thank you very much for raising this for us, and I'm sure this is something that will be pursued further as we gather more information and look further into it. Thank you very much.
Could you keep me informed on?
I'm sure we'll see you on a regular basis,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
can keep you informed, definitely.
Thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Next on our list is Amanda McDonald with regards to short-term rentals.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for letting me come here today and talk to you about the cottage rental industry and a new association that is available to be of service to you. My name is Amanda McDonald, and I have a cottage on 6 Mile Lake. My principal residence is in Cambridge, which is about an hour west of Toronto. And I live there with my family, and I work as a veterinarian. As a child, my favorite 2 weeks of the summer were the 2 weeks that we rented a cottage. Both of my parents worked and worked hard, and so family time was of short supply and much cherished. And I remember at the cottage, my parents teaching me how to fish, teaching me how to cook a marshmallow to the perfect amount so that it doesn't fall off the stick, how to get a leech off my shin, and how to swim to the swim raft with one arm so that with my other arm I could carry my dry towel over my head. As an adult, I continued to rent cottages for myself and for my new developing family. After many years, I was able to afford a cottage, and I had a cottage for a number of years on Go Home Lake, and now I have a road access cottage on 6 Mile Lake. I continue the tradition of renting cottages and rent my cottage out when I can't be there, and it is enjoyed by many of the next generation of urban families and new Canadians. There are many advantages to responsible cottage rentals for the cottage owner and for the community. Cottages aren't cheap to buy or to maintain. It's expensive to service a mortgage for a cottage and still have money left over to maintain the property and the shoreline. We are a proud working family's lake, not a millionaire's playground. For me, for example, rental income has allowed me to repair my dilapidated dock, And I've just recently found out that my septic system has issues and is at risk of failing. If I didn't have rental income, I don't know how I could afford to repair it. When I lived on Go Home Lake, many of the cottage owners had legacy cottages and needed to rent for several weeks of the year to be able to afford to pay their property taxes. Responsible renting allows owners to keep up property values, participate financially in community endeavors, afford the work necessary to maintain their shoreline, and pay their taxes on time. The community also benefits from responsible rental industry. Visitors spend their tourism dollars locally. During the last municipal election, I was buying supplies in Mactier, and I asked some shopkeepers, what's of importance to you? What are the big issues? And over again, I heard, we need more tourists. We need more tourism dollars. We need more business. Well, we tell our renters what the local services are. We leave them information and we encourage them to use them, and they do. So why am I here telling you all these things that I'm sure that you already inherently know, as there has been a thriving rental industry in Georgian Bay Township for many, many decades? Well, it's that things are changing. When I was a child and we were looking for a cottage to rent, we waited until Saturday morning and we walked down to the convenience store and we got a newspaper. And we opened it up to the classified, we found ads for cottages that we thought we might like, and we used a telephone to contact the cottage owners. We then went to their house and looked at a photo album, and we got to know them and they got to know us. It was an intensive and very personal experience. Now renting is as easy as click, click, click on your computer. That's not inherently a bad thing, but it does make it very easy for anybody to get on and start renting without a lot of thought or effort put into it. 99% of renters are fabulous families that really enjoy the Georgian Bay experience. I have a guest book full of thank yous that really touch my heart. But the 1% of irresponsible renters all across Ontario are getting a lot of attention lately. Townships all over Ontario, including the ones directly to the north and south of us, are having to deal with issues from irresponsible rentals. And of course, we will too. We have the opportunity as a township to take a leadership role in getting ahead of this issue. We can focus on education rather than enforcement and get ahead of the problems. What will the benefit be to us? If we continue our strong rental industry in this township, this is where the tourism dollars are going to go, as our neighbors are struggling with bans and regulations. And I hear from realtors in the surrounding townships that there's a panic that their buyers can't afford to buy something if they're not allowed to rent it. So where will those buyers go? And what will that do for our property values? To help you lead an educative approach, I want to tell you about a new association. It's called the Cottage Rental Association. This is an Ontario-wide association with free membership that is dedicated to the promotion of a responsible rental industry. Their members include cottage owners, ones who do rent their cottages and ones who don't, families that want to continue to rent cottages, and local business people who support the rental industry. They are focused on developing and sharing best practices to help owners and renters rent responsibly. This includes educating owners about safety and fire concerns, septic capacity, screening renters, taking deposits, being transparent with your neighbors, being available for any problems, and addressing issues immediately. And encouraging renters to use local services. This also includes educating renters on these points. The association is committed to protecting the environment, respecting neighbors, shoreline restoration, and the conservation of aquatic life. The association believes all cottage owners need to work together in a positive and united approach. If we can promote these ideals and practices, we can educate our constituents on how to maintain a rental industry that will continue to benefit us all. So I'm here today to ask you as a council to adopt an educative approach when it comes to short-term cottage rentals and to remember the services of the Cottage Rental Association to assist you when you're having discussions with your constituents and with each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda, thank you for coming today and bringing this to us because it is a growing issue, as I'm sure most people are aware of. I applaud you for bringing it to our attention that there is an association that has formed. And I think the education process is something that we would embrace as a township rather than enforcement. It's very hard to enforce. And so the fact that there is an association that has formed is absolutely a positive as far as I'm concerned. And most certainly, I think if you could get the information to us, if you have a website or other, that we could spread the word. I think it's not going anywhere any day soon, and nor should it, the rental aspect of cottage owning. And in that case, I think it would be great to be able to work hand in hand with the association to make it a better, more cohesive world with people that actually are in ownership. Because that seems to be one of our bigger problems right now is just a bit of lack of information between owners of rentals and the people that are renting. So thank you very much for your submission today.
Councilor Yanko.
Thanks, Amanda. Couple of questions. Is there a website for this cottages rental?
Yes, there is. cottagerentalassociation.ca.
Okay, yeah, I'll look it up. I understand that you've been working with the Six Mile Lake Association, and there's going to be an article, I think, in the upcoming Echoes that you're writing.
That's correct.
Is it possible to get that article out to other cottage associations, Go Home Lake, Gloucester Pool, Stewart Lake, and so on? I have the contacts for those, if you like. Maybe I can send it to me, I can send it out or whatever, but I think if you're going to write an article, if it's generic enough, we could probably send it out to all the cottage associations, including the ones on the bay, and that would be probably the best education that we can do. I don't know if the township can do anything. Maybe they can do something in their tax bill, but not too many people read the stuff in the tax bill. But we could get articles out to all these associations, and hopefully they would pass it out to their members. So that's something we can work on if you want to contact me, or we can do probably something on that.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to.
Great, thanks.
Councilor Cooper.
Just briefly, thank you very much, and secondly, and just to state that if you were to send it to council, we could share it with our various cottage associations, so that would be terrific. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate your presentation. Thanks for coming today. And thank you. Our next presentation is James Murphy from the Muskoka Airport.
Hi everyone, my name is James Murphy. I'm actually with Explorers Edge, the regional tourism organization. The Muskoka Airport is owned by the District of Muskoka, so they're a separate entity from us. So I'm here to give you an update in 10 minutes. Thank you, Your Worship, and good to see some familiar faces around the table. And Jennifer and I work very closely together, and if she's not updated you already, over the years we've supported many initiatives with Georgian Bay Township through our partnership program, whether it be signage or video production or just that water festival. I see the plaque up there, success. So today I'm here to bring you up to speed on a project that we've been working on for 3.5 years. I believe Councillor Wanko was on economic development when we first started the feasibility study at the district level 3.5 years ago, of this idea that in order to increase tourism receipts, we were going to look at new markets. There's been a love affair with this region with the United States for quite some time, and for small business operators, further a tourist comes from, the more they spend, the longer they stay. So it's higher yields for small business. The other thing we've been looking at for that time frame is dispersion. We often hear that the province gets these international travelers and they boast the numbers that come through the airports, but do rural areas of Ontario necessarily see them? So how do we work on dispersing travelers throughout the province, throughout the region, throughout the townships, and furthermore, how do we get there in a very consumer-centric fashion? Nobody likes spending time on the road. So we started looking at how do we go into these markets, how do we make it easier for these consumers to get to our region to experience the product. And at that time, we looked at the Muskoka Airport, which just spent $6 million resurfacing the runway. And we thought if planes were landing to be refinished at the airport, they were landing empty. And a very simple thought was, why not put tourists on those planes? Have them fly in, leave their money here, and go home. They don't tax the education system or necessarily the healthcare system. They come and leave their money, enjoy the product, and go home. So we started a process, feasibility study, negotiating with the airlines, and all these devices. And what came out of it was Porter Airlines signed with the RTO a 3-year commitment to service this region with flights, commercial air service, twice a week for a 10-week period. Same theory as Mount Tremblant started. You start small and then grow the service out. The commitment is to run the service for 10 weeks, so Mondays and Thursdays, with the exception of long weekend on Tuesdays. The flight prices are up there, $72 from Toronto to Muskoka Airport and $45 outbound. And this was, for myself, that's been in tourism for quite some time and has a background in academia. This is the nirvana of tourism destination development. If you can get a commercial airline to service your region, it brings in new markets, it brings in new travelers to the area. But it didn't end there, because we have a very vast region. RTO is made up of yesterday I was in Whitney. Whitney all the way up to Pickle River, down to Severn River, over to Georgian Bay. So we have a very vast region. So it's great that the asset is in Gravenhurst, the airport, but how do we disperse them throughout the region? How do we get them out to Whitney? I have stakeholders there, and how do we get them out to Georgian Bay Township? So the board of directors invested in a shuttle service. You know, when the planes land, there'll be shuttles. There's 5 main shuttles, and one of them comes right out to Georgian Bay Township, with a stop at Christie's Mill as one of the stops. So there's 5 main routes, but the consumer would pay $10 online to book the shuttle in advance, and that would bring them out to Georgian Bay Township. We also went one step further in the initial year. We run a program called Fuel and Fun that we have. It's a blue chip program for the last 6 years, where if a consumer books in the spring and the fall, they receive a $50 gas card and 2 $25 vouchers. This program was meant in the past to build the shoulder seasons and to be a tipping point, because the clause of the agreement is that you can't spend the vouchers at the accommodation. It encourages the consumer to go out into other areas, restaurants, shops, boutiques, to spend their vouchers. And the vouchers often yield approximately a $65, $70 spend at a store or a restaurant. So this was a great program. It also gives us great intelligence of where the consumers are going and what they're spending their money on. So for this year of inception for commercial air service, we're running a program called Fly and Explore. So if you book accommodation and you book a flight, you get 4 $25 vouchers to go out and spend. Because at the end of this entire exercise, the RTO will need to show economic impact of the tourism industry. So the vouchers are the way for us to track where the spending is going, where a traveler is going, and what they're doing. We've had about 250 operators sign up to participate in the program, so that's fantastic. We're also this year, to support the program, going to Rendezvous Canada. Rendezvous Canada is once a year. It happens all over Canada, sometimes in Halifax, sometimes in Vancouver. This year it's in Toronto, where international buyers come to one venue and experience all the product that we have. This is great for us because we're launching commercial air service, and when we do media tours to the area, the media get very excited in the fact that not only are we wilderness and we have the product, we have Georgian Bay, we have the biosphere, we have Algonquin Park, we have the Pickle River, but it's now accessible. There's not, Americans anecdotally think of Toronto traffic like LA traffic. So this idea of, you know, flying into Toronto, getting on a flight and coming right up here and starting your vacation in wilderness is very interesting to them. Not only is there shuttle service, but there's also taxi rentals at the airport as well too. So there's a variety of ways to move them out. And on top of that, the RTO is spending a considerable amount of our budget going into international markets, specifically Boston, Chicago, New York, and Washington, those 4 main hubs that Porter services. And we've done our homework too on what the key tourism activities would resonate with those markets. So this is all part of building our international audiences, a 5-year strategy that we have from the RTO. We spent considerable time domestically, using content marketing and building domestically, and the outcomes of that was in 14 to 15 and 15 to 16, our region out of 13 regions saw the highest increase in visitor spending to the tune of $100 million, and we were in the top 3 of increased visitation to the region. There's a lag in ministry statistics. We don't have the next plot yet of stats, but in those 2 years when we were doing heavy domestic marketing, content marketing, it yielded some positive results. We can't take all the credit, but certainly the numbers and analytics show that we had a considerable impact on that. I talked about the dispersion, the transacting program, Fly and Explore, great way to track economic impact. It's a tipping point for the small businesses and primes the pump. We're also running a couple contests in order to get the word out on the commercial air service. One in inbound, Fly with the Band to Key to Bala. It's a package of 4, and another one with Moose FM where somebody from this region can win 2 tickets to anywhere in Ontario that Porter flies. So again, work being done to get the word out that the flights are happening. Us as a regional tourism organization moving forward is that really we see tourism development as strongly associated with economic development. You know, tourism is a catalyst for greater things to come, and certainly like Mount Tremblant, where it started on a very seasonal service with Porter, Air Canada followed suit a couple years later, and they also grew their service out from not just 4 weeks in the winter. Now they run flights from December right through till October. So this is not just a 3-year commitment, but it's a starting point for a marathon, decade or 2-decade marathon to grow the tourism industry, economic impact, and so on and so forth. And here we go, off to the races. We're having our AGM June 18th in Parry Sound, and the next thing once we get, because we were delayed a year getting commercial air service going due to Bill C-49. It was a Transportation Act with the federal government, and that allows CATSA services at a regional airport on a cost recovery basis. So we're out of the gates now. The elephant in the room right now is workforce development and housing and transportation, and we'll be turning our attention to that next and looking at programs that will really solve that challenge as well too. So those are high-level programs that we're working on, and I'm here today to not only say we haven't forgot about Georgian Bay Township. Often you hear the rumblings of, you know, how do we get involved in this and work with this? We have a separate bus running right out here, and we're working with the operators in the area. There is also an opportunity, I know no decisions will be made here today, that we are looking for, whether it be municipalities or private entities, to invest in the marketing program that's going out into international audiences. We do, you know, include everybody, but there's an opportunity that if, you know, there's more of a presence in our materials, there's an opportunity for the Township of Georgian Bay to invest in that, and we would do some matching funds and push it out like we have with other programs. And I can discuss that with Jennifer and work on that if that's of interest to this council. So at this point, I hope I kept it under 10 minutes. We're good. That was just an update, so thank you for having me. I'm very excited. It's you know, for tourism, you know, having new markets and having access and having somebody like an airline like Porter, you know, put the stamp of approval, because they're taking a risk. It's an unknown, unproven airport that's been catering to private jets and local enthusiasts for some time. To come in and put their stamp of approval on it and say they're servicing is a big deal for the region. So I leave that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Yanko.
Thanks, James. I know you've worked really hard on this project over the years, and you've always been upbeat on this project, so I'm glad it's come through. Again, this is mainly for, at least for our area, it would be more in the tourist area. It's not for cottagers coming to the cottage for the weekend, or hopefully not visitors for the weekend. But if there's going to be a shuttle over to our area, and it'll maybe say goes to Christie's Mill, how flexible is that bus? If somebody, say, wanted to go to Raleigh Lodge, that would be outside of our township, but it'll be around the corner. If somebody wanted to go to Honey Harbor, or even to, I don't know, maybe a particular lake or something like that, how flexible is your shuttle? Can they pinpoint delivery, or they just drop them off someplace?
We're here to make it work. So the shuttle, mind you, there's 17 tourism operators in the region that we cater to. So running a shuttle out to each individual operator would be very costly. So we can, certainly the accommodations is sort of where we want to go to. So Raleigh Lodge, Severn Lodge, any accommodations around here would be sort of the top tier of, you know, even the national park, the campgrounds would be sort of the top tier. And we are flexible. If they phone up and say, you know, we've got somebody flying in on quarter, can you help us get them out there? Or can we be flexible on the shuttle? Absolutely, we can make that happen. Sort of the next tier is getting them out to their cottages or out to a lake. So we'd have to do that on a first come, like explore that. But that opens up a sort of Pandora's box of we could be going to every lake sort of thing. But certainly the accommodations is the first one, and we're flexible on getting that shuttle out to any accommodation that wants to participate.
Okay, and just the person before you, Amanda, was talking about rental cottages. I can see this as a way of getting to a rental cottage for a week.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I don't think that'll be a big part of the business first off, but I can see that's an opportunity to expand your shuttle service into these smaller lakes, where you can deliver people for a week to the rental cottage and then pick them up and take them to the airport.
So two things. I'll be back in the fall. This is a benchmark year. This is something new. There's not a lot of case studies to do for us. So it's a learning as we go and being flexible as we go. The deals with sort of the accommodation is that not only are the consumers off the plane coming to the accommodation, but if somebody's renting a cottage or coming to visit friends and relatives, that still has an economic impact. So they can sign up online to take the shuttle, and they can be dropped off in Aunt Christie's Mill. Then it's responsibility of others to come pick them up there. So it's not just you have to be a guest of it in Aunt Christie's Mill. It could be you're just coming to the area, you book the bus for $10, and you come in, and then it's the responsibility to pick up from there. Same conversation we had in Whitney yesterday is sending the bus out there. It's like, we can't go out to everybody, but we'll drop them off, and that's the responsibility of operators. Same as Dwight, Dorset, you know, we'll have stop-off locations and then pick up from there.
Councilor Cooper.
Yes, James, thanks for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And I've had a little exposure to you before, having been on the board of Muskoka Tourism for my first term of council. And Explorers Edge is certainly a terrific organization.
Thank you.
I commend the work that you're doing. Down to a practical question.
Yes.
And that is, can you give me some sort of door-to-door estimate in terms of time that it would take from the Pearson Airport to get to Muskoka Airport and then transfer my luggage and get onto a bus and transfer onto that shuttle bus and arrive over here at Raleigh Lodge? Can you give me some sort of time estimate?
Yeah, so it's a 20-minute flight from Billy Bishop to Muskoka Airport, so 20 minutes there. The beauty of Muskoka Airport, that is a small rural airport, so there's not a lot of tarmac time. It's you literally get off the plane and the bus will be waiting there to pick you up. I did the drive today from Bracebridge, so Muskoka Airport, and it was 45 minutes. So I came down, the bus road's going to come down through Orillia and then over. I believe that when we're working with Hammonds as well too, that would be it. So 45 minutes, so what are we up to? 40, 50, an hour and 10 minutes. So that's in Aunt Christie's Mill. I'm not sure of the timing from here to Raleigh, but you know, that's what we're looking at for that. The great thing of it is international tourists don't have a concept necessarily of time and geography. You know, there is a consumer experience to be had on that bus where time will just pass by. They get here, maybe there's a welcome package on the way out. You know, we could have a staff on the bus that explains, you know, you're on your way to Raleigh Lodge, but did you know that Bay Biosphere is up there? There's a park, there's hiking. By the time you explain the breweries and the region, time will fly by. So, you know, much like going to international traveling to Mexico or someplace, even Mount Tremblant, you're on at the best of times, you're on the bus for 45 minutes. In bad weather, you're on the bus for an hour. So, and I preface that by saying this is a benchmark year. you know, the bus is important because it also offers an opportunity for intercept for visitor exit surveys and gathering information on that bus as well too. So, and that's part of being here today, because it's not, the RTO is heading up, creating opportunity, but it's not just the RTO that's going to make it succeed. It is the cottage rentals, it is the visiting friends and relatives, it is the counselors in this room that can start talking about it or informed about it. Because, you know, in 10 years, it's, sorry to get off topic, but in 10 years, it's to grow this out to be something more than just catering to travelers or second homeowners. Could this be in 10 years a commuter service? Could this be something greater than just twice a week over 10 weeks? And that's sort of the marathon is. But to get here, so 20 minutes, 5 minutes, the bus, 45 minutes. You know, we'll keep you updated on times, and certainly we want to Councillor Ranko's comment, to make this as consumer friendly as possible and try and accommodate everybody in the first year. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Councillor Hazes.
Just a quick question. You're
Yes.
flying into Bracebridge, but you're coming down Highway 11 past Aurelia and then across,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yes.
What about the idea of flying into Aurelia?
Flying into Aurelia?
Yeah.
That's out of my scope. I think Aurelia, I can't speak to Aurelia. I don't know. It's not in my region, so I didn't have, maybe if I was working in but no, I can't comment to that. Porter's.
Yeah, I get it. It's just, to me, flying north and then driving south is somewhat counterintuitive, and you cut the trip almost in half if you are in and out of Aurelia.
We could say the same. And I had one person take me aside and say, well, why don't you just fly into Pembroke or Renfrew and just come over to Whitney? And I'm like, well, because it's the regional boundaries and it's the funding we have, and I don't, maybe I'll get a job offer from Aurelia to get their airport going. But I like it here, so. But it is all about the region, the product here, and it's even the renting the car and putting out itineraries to say, it's not just, Bala, Cranberry, up through, some microbreweries, the dining, and it's within the region. It's that wilderness just north of Toronto. And the product here is much more associated with Algonquin Park and, Bin Inlet, rather than the city of Aurelia. So my job is to make sure the economic impact is within the boundaries of the RTO. So I'm here to work on behalf of those stakeholders. So I do contact, I have been in contact with the big music festival in Aurelia, with one on the highway. Yeah, Burroughs Creek, saying, this opportunity is here too. It's not my business to promote Burroughs Creek, but it could help your business case to bring them down the highway for concerts and so on and so forth. So there's that collaboration outside. But good luck to the city of Aurelia if they want to. Jennifer, did you have a question?
Just to further what Councillor Hazelton is saying, it would be interesting, James, if you would consider a route that would take you through the community of Wata and down through the Muskoka region, so that we could highlight some of the items that are along the route, like Mrs. C's Fish and Chips, which is pretty famous for good quality product. It would take us down through the Iroquois Cranberry area, even though it's not operating, and then maybe down the 400 series highways. Just a consideration, because it would be nice to have.
Yeah, we took that to Councillor Cooper's point. We had the route set up. One route is going through Bala and Wata up to Perry Sound, but we were cognitive of the time on the bus. If you were to include those stops, it would take that out to almost. So we crunch those. There is a route going that way and highlighting that experience, but it's Gravenhurst, the Perry Sound route. And it was just to Councillor Cooper, we were very, how much time do we want them on the bus? So this one is specific just to get them here, because you're furthest out from there. So let's get them here as quick as possible. But if that doesn't work, we can start to look at other routes that include it. But that sort of experience is a Perry Sound.
Mr. Chair, I just want to highlight a couple of things, because James very humbly skimmed over what he has done for the Township of Georgian Bay, but our partnership program for the Township of Georgian Bay has been going on for over 4 years, and I'm just going to rhyme off a list of a couple of things. All of our branding, so including our new flag, our new logo, our banners here, the entrance features for all the communities, as well as the banners that you see on the roadways for streetscaping, all 50% funded by Explorer's Edge. The mural that exists in Port Severn at the Beacon, that is becoming, as Councillor Bocek is suggesting, even a tourism attraction, 50% funded by Explorer's Edge. The front of the mural that says, "Where am I?" and draws attention to the traveling public so that they have a little bit of a marketing plug to say that they're right beside the Great Lakes, that they're in Georgian Bay, and that there are all kinds of natural assets, 50% funded by Explorer's Edge. The promotional video that we did for the Honey Harbor Waterfront Plan, 50% funded by Explorer's Edge, and our most recent video that is underway with respect to the Lieutenant Governor's visit, as well as the mural up in MacTier, 50% funded by Explorer's Edge. So this organization is a huge advocate of our attempts to try to facilitate a positive, consistent brand throughout all of our communities that is I think the most important piece is that it's consistent, so people know that they're traveling through the community, including all of our wayfinding signings that shows where the Stewart Lake is, where Lily Pond is, trying to make sure all of your regions are connected, all 50% funded by Explorer's Edge. So your worship, and as the chair of this community, it's very important that you recognize that this organization is thumbs up in my economic development book.
And of course, don't forget that they are funded significantly by the taxpayers of the entire district.
Well,
so we're getting some of our money back.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
I couldn't help that. Well, thank you very much for coming. I greatly appreciate the information and the presentation, and thank you.
I'll follow up with Jennifer sort of on that investment piece and see if there's an interest for this council to continue partnering with us to drive travelers to the region.
Thank you.
Your worship. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you. Councillor Manco.
Council, you ready to continue? Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole adopts the agenda of May 14th, 2019 as circulated. All those in favor? Carried. I gather nobody for the open forum. So now we have a financial services report, 2019-20, with regards to the 2020 budget schedule. I presume that's to our Director of Finance.
Is there not another delegation?
No, sorry, he was unable to attend today.
I'll just email my deputy treasurer if you don't mind. I'll begin.
So you want us to skip over you and come back, or you go? Okay.
No.
Please do.
I've been saying 15 more minutes for a while. So budget 2020, we have Honey Harbor 2020, now we have budget 2020.
Not quite the same.
It is in my world. Anyway, this reports the official kickoff to the next budget season and returns to the traditional timelines. It was a little later last year due to new council, as everybody knows. Attachment 1 is really the meat of it, and it shows the plan for your approval today. The main milestones are, skipping to the end, is the goal is final approval of the budget in January 2020 so that we can get to business faster, put our tenders out quicker, with the first draft coming to council November. If we're able to pass it in 2 meetings this year, that would be ideal, but we've allowed for 3 meetings of delegations. And in order to achieve this, we back up to the July Committee of the Whole meeting, where we'll have public delegations, and council will be perhaps setting the guidelines for staff to follow as we prepare the budget throughout the summer and fall, and that begins with my individual meetings with council members within the next few weeks in order to, so I know it's very early, but that's the timeline that would be required. And I know we're under regional review, but we will proceed business as normal until we're told otherwise. So that's really the snapshot of this report.
Thank you. Any councillors raising their hands? Councillor Jarvis.
Just since this is my first time on council, the schedule we're looking at here is pretty much in line with previous schedules that are not in election years, would that be correct?
Through the chair, more or less. My first year was a little later because I was new some years, but this is what I believe 2 years ago we were able to accomplish. Yep, this is the more traditional. We aim for a final adoption January, February, December even. So March was pretty late this year.
Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that the Draft 1 presentation of the 2020 consolidated budget and 10-year capital plan update be held at the November 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting with the goal of final adoption by Council in January 2020. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is Operations Report 2019-07 with regards to the Stewart Lake Pavilion. Mr. Zokach.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're bringing this forward as the scope of work for the electrification of the pavilion. I believe the expectations of the community are different from what was in the budget, so we have received a reasonable quote for the work. It's above our budget of $2,500. I believe it's around $7,500, and we're just asking for the budget to be increased.
Any discussion by the councillors? Councillor Douglas.
Well, I think this is something that's been on the board as long as I've been a councillor in the last term. And it is something the community has been asking for quite some time, probably even before I got involved. But, you know, it's a beautiful pavilion. It does get well used, and I think it warrants to be able to, you know, facilitate this. I don't know, Councillor Wayanko, you've been involved a little bit longer than I have with it, and you might have a few words to say to that, but the community has been requesting this for well into the 5th year now from us, so I'm not sure how we can facilitate it, but I'd like to hope that we can get something done here.
I was just going to say, I think this is, the quote you have is an individual who's offering his time, I think, he's volunteering some time to do this work, and he's just looking for cost for tangible materials.
Through the mayor, that's my understanding.
So basically, this is rock bottom costs of doing this, so there's a lot of volunteer time involved in this particular quote.
I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that the Stewart Lake Pavilion electrical project be revised to include LED lighting for the pavilion, and that the project budget increased from $2,500 to $6,000 to accommodate the revised scope, with the additional funds coming from the Parkland Reserve Fund. All those in favor? Carried. Seeing people starting to pack up, I presume there's no new business, and therefore I'm going to go, be it resolved that Committee of the Whole adjourns at 11:33 a.m. until Tuesday, June 11th at 1 p.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? Carried, and we are adjourned.